Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, where our goal is to keep you informed, inspired, and a little entertained on all things diabetes. The information contained in this program is based on the experience and opinions of the Integrated Diabetes Services clinical team. Please discuss any changes to your treatment plan with your personal healthcare provider before implementing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Smith, the Registered Dietitian Certified Diabetes Care and Education Specialist with Integrated Diabetes and the Director of Lifestyle and Nutrition. And my colleague, Dana, and I are here to talk today all things nutrition, sort of unfiltered. Right, Dana?
Yeah, I'm super excited to do this. Jenny and I never get a chance to just one-on-one, just kind of go deep on nutrition and diabetes. And this is going to be super fun. Hopefully we'll get to do this over and over with some new topics. But today we're just going to kind of get started on some basics. Again, my name is Dana Roseman, a registered dietitian and certified diabetes care and education specialist as well. And I'm the Director of Technology and Applied Research for Integrated Diabetes. Let's get into it, Jenny.
Yeah. So, I've had type 1 for 37 years. I don't know how long have you?
Not quite 30. I'm right behind you at 28. And
28. So you've been rolling kind of long enough. Did you ever start on the exchange diet?
Absolutely. I think everybody, who was born before 80, not to age us, right, was on the exchange diet. And It's still so ingrained in my head. I don't know about you, but everything I do try to move away from that 15 increment, but it took a long time for me to move away from 15 grams and a piece of bread and just, calling it a day.
Yes, and then there are a lot of things that then have changed, right? Over the course of the years that we've had diabetes and the course of the years that we've been helping other people who have diabetes too, I've always looked back on that as, okay, my lunch is no longer like 2 starches and 1 fruit and 2 vegetables, you know what I mean? But I do think that it provides a really good base for where we are now with the changes that have happened in especially type 1 nutrition information, because I think we've become really carb-centric.
Yeah.
Right? And we're missing out on what that really emphasized was balance.
Right. And I think that when you talk about exchanges, I do think about these very separate food groups that were, they had a line dividing everything and you were just counting what you could have for that meal. And I think just that word, you could have, I remember my mom was like, oh, you could have this, you could have that. Well, now we've really moved away to you can have all of it. There's not, any parameters or limitations, but of course, learning how to balance all of that to what you just said.
And I mean, today's information, thankfully, I think has brought in what you're kind of emphasizing is more flexibility, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It is no longer the you can't have it or the no sugar at all, right? But it also, even with our technology, which I know we'll talk about within this realm too, but with technology and everything, we've got a lot more ability to have flexibility, and that's lovely.
Absolutely. I think technology has really moved the ball for nutrition and widening the menu, so to speak, and especially continuous glucose monitors. I think that if you were to pick one technology to help the most in terms of mealtime, insulin dosing, strategizing for your meals, that CGM is above all.
Absolutely. I mean, if I can't remember, it was quite a while ago. I was at a meeting with other people with diabetes and we just started chatting about technology, right? And almost everybody said the same thing. If there was the zombie apocalypse that we all talk about and worry about and like hoard supplies.
Hoard your diabetes supplies. Absolutely.
Right. I would 100% try to make it to the companies that make the CGM supplies and like hoard those.
Right. And it just, those directional arrows are such a game changer because we all, those of us who know the finger sticks, just, you had a point snapshot in time and you were just kind of hoping for the best, right? But to have that prediction in terms of metabolism and how your blood sugars are impacted from food in general, it's just a total game changer.
It is. And, again, going back to like the exchange system, I'm sure you were taught that vegetables are free.
Right. Oh my gosh, that whole list, right? And don't worry about protein and fat because who would bother with that, right?
Right. Yeah, I know my one wonderful aunt who, after I was diagnosed, she asked my mom, she was always more so the host of family gatherings and holiday kinds of events. And she asked my mom right away for that upcoming Christmas, say, but what can Jenny have? Right.
Right.
And my mom was like, you can make a big plate of peeled cucumbers, because at the time I didn't really like the skin on the cucumber.
Go dig in, Jenny.
My lovely aunt and uncle, they peeled, I don't even know how many cucumbers, because they were free. Now,
Oh my gosh.
right? And so Jenny
Absolutely.
was sitting and eating a plate of cucumbers, which I'm quite sure at some point between the finger sticks created a swing up in my blood sugar that I didn't capture. But it all seemed to work out.
Absolutely. Right.
So,
Absolutely. Because there is no free lunch, no free cucumbers. And whether, and that's what I think I love so much about nutrition science in general, in addition to diabetes management, is just kind of the science and navigating all of that and learning what your body does and how it responds, because I know your response to cucumbers is maybe going to be different from my response to cucumbers. And so I think that's a part of maybe where people get stuck in terms of nutrition and diabetes, is that they think it's one size fits all, and that, those chicken nuggets are going to hit the same way that they're supposed to time and time again. And it's just, as you well know, just not the case.
it's not. And I think that, again, it brings in the benefit of some type of the technology we
Absolutely.
have, especially the CGMs, because had I known eating the whole plate of cucumbers I would have very quickly gone back with my mom to the doctor and said, cucumbers aren't free.
Right.
Like it would have brought two and two together, like we can now see today. And I think that's brought in, especially with, the macronutrients, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being the carbs, the proteins, and the fats, the ones that provide us the calories. As I said, we're more carb centric, but we're really learning. I think even in the past 5 years,
Agreed.
We're learning and talking more about the fats and the proteins.
But I would say people who have had diabetes for so long are always shocked at, oh, this is going to come into the conversation. I thought I could eat as much protein and fat as I wanted to and have no problems. But when you really start having that conversation about, no, do you realize that delayed rise that you're having, 2-3 hours later, and it all makes sense to people when you start bringing in those other macronutrients.
Absolutely. And then it's again, as you said, it's the understanding of how does this food hit me,
Right.
With the online community that we now have today, which all of us, I think, are very grateful for. I think that is where the exchange of information gets a little bit muddied in, well, my child or I, can eat this, and I always see this happen, but my friend doesn't see that happen. Why am I doing something wrong? And it is where the individual nature of paying attention to what happens for you comes beneficial.
Yeah. And I would take that a step further. And what worked for me, I don't know if you feel the same way, but what worked for me 10 years ago or 15 years ago, sure is not the same today. My metabolism is changing with age. And perhaps with some folks, if they're starting new medications or a GLP-1, that really changes metabolism and digestion timing. And of course, that impacts insulin timing. Mm-hmm. And then one thing I would also say that always surprises folks is, weight management. And if there's a weight loss, insulin is weight-based. And so then we go and try to adjust mealtime adjustments and basal adjustments. And so, yeah, I do think that people get very focused on carbohydrates, and that is just such a small part of the picture.
It is. And, I think a bigger piece, as you were kind of just hinting at in what you said about like insulin doses and the amounts, and as they shift up as we grow or we change through a stage of life, whether you're pregnancy preparation or your perimenopausal or your testosterone levels are changing as a man as you get whatever it is, right? We have to expect that our insulin needs are not flat through our life. And thus, as we age and change, we should expect that things around nutrition will shift too. Even our interests in food might shift and change. And especially with all the discussion online. about this diet, or have you tried that one? And it's the reason I hate diet, because I don't know about you, but honestly, the word diet to me indicates almost a time framed parameter.
Absolutely. A short term, try to do something quick and short.
Yeah. Instead of, I like fueling plan better, because it makes me think of, especially having worked with athletes who are more endurance, we talk about fueling over the course of this long duration something. And I think fueling your body is more a lifelong understanding then. And what you find works, yes, it may evolve and your insulin needs might shift and change. Technology can help you see the shifts and the changes and how you can cover it better with, your pumping system or whatever you're using. But yeah,
but I think if you consider food fuel, I use a lot of car analogies when I'm talking to people. So it's the gasoline for your engine, right?
Yeah.
And it does shift it. It's not a quick fix. It's not a quick burst. It's fuel that you want to use and use effectively.
Yeah. And I think that, if I was ever restarting career-wise, I definitely really love the track I started with, nutrition, right? Biology really with more human nutrition emphasis. But I think I'd do a track of trying to figure out how to program nutrition education, nutrition health education from kindergarten through high school, for example, so that each year you get a build on of, okay, these are the food groups in kindergarten. And, by the time you get to high school, most teens are interested in some type of sport or extracurricular, something that requires their bodies to be completely fueled the right way. And if they knew more, they would fuel better. And then if they have diabetes, they would understand more about why they're seeing things happen.
Right. And of course, I think, both of us would probably agree that a lot of providers don't have adequate nutrition education as well. No, I agree. I think that people, diabetes is such a food focused disease. And unless your team has a real dedication to learning and implementing nutrition education, it's definitely something that people unfortunately don't have enough of.
Yeah. I mean, even around the fat and protein topic, we understand carbohydrates have calorie value. And I think most people with diabetes understand there's an allotment of carbohydrates you might need. Hopefully, I'm hopeful there, and that people have an idea, that 500 a day is probably not what you need. But I think it gets missed, especially with the concept that's still around about fat and protein. The concept that it doesn't really require you to pay attention to it. So it's almost like a freebie, like my cucumbers.
Right. Your cucumber story is going to sit with me the rest of the day. But I think a lot of people combine, it's just I'm going to think about poor little Jenny with her cucumbers. But I think so many folks, come in and talk to us, and they are so focused on just looking for protein and fat and eliminating so many quality carbohydrates that their body needs, and eliminating a whole class of fiber or micronutrients with all the color of fruits and vegetables. And they're eating a pretty bland, for lack of color or white diet of, protein and fat, and thinking that's the only way that they can do it. And I don't know if the ketogenic diet, for dieting has really impacted that, but it's definitely not the only way. Right.
Right. And it might, again, I mean, as we work with people as dietitians and educators, we are not tied into any one particular fueling plan.
Right.
You understand what you want to do, great. We'll help you to get it to work out. But in the realm of even caloric intake with fats and proteins, there's a missing piece of information there because it doesn't hit like a carb does.
Right.
And so the concept of portion containment, it becomes kind of a gray area. Even adding extra calories in between meals. Let's say you found that eating, 2 cheese sticks and a protein chew in the middle of the day.
Which always be that free food, the cheese sticks, right?
Right. Absolutely. They're a free food, but they're not free calorically.
No.
So if you're already meeting your needs with your main meals and your freebies still have calories, and just because you can get away with not covering them. Maybe your system is so well set that you can do that. It doesn't necessarily mean you need the calories.
Right.
So Yeah, it's a missing piece in education, I think, especially once we get to adulthood. And I definitely know that it's missed for those who are diagnosed more as an adult.
Right, right. Well, I
Unfortunately.
find those folks who are diagnosed as an adult, when they get that, maybe it's a misdiagnosis of type 2 diabetes, or maybe it's a confusing diagnosis of LADA and they're not really sure what that means. But I think that the majority of folks leave that initial diagnosis visit and say, watch your carbs, right? And then,
Right.
of course, people are like, well, I'm going to watch them. I don't really know what to do about that.
Yes. Boy, they look nice on my plate.
Right, right. I'm going to watch other people eat them, right?
Yes. And I mean, it brings back in the technology. Maybe some of those people diagnosed again more as an adult have actually been prescribed a CGM or
Right.
have been told a better strategic way to use finger sticks to get some information, right? But if they are just told to watch carbs, well, what realm should your blood sugar
Then what?
stay in? Where should
Right.
it be? What should I get out of the CGM information that can help me understand better how to maneuver within what I'm trying to do with the food that I eat?
Right. And I think so now, to your point, most people, especially little ones, at initial diagnosis, they do leave the hospital with a continuous glucose monitor. And when you watch the carbs, sure, you watch little Johnny's blood sugar soar after that, milkshake or
Right.
something, the Cheerios or whatever it is, but you don't necessarily have the understanding of the insulin timing, which I think is the beginning and the end of either, and it doesn't even matter how you're taking your insulin. It could be injections, could be, technology that's automated. The insulin stays the same and the timing of that insulin stays the same. And so learning how to time that with the food spikes is not, I don't know if that's touched upon in initial diagnosis.
I don't think it is. I think it's more what I see, I think we all see as educators is this startup of getting you to a place mentally of feeling like this is something you can live with, that you can navigate with your child and they're still going to be a child. And then comes in they can eat anything they want.
Right.
We
right.
can have the flexibility.
Which is
that we
so
want.
different from where we started with diabetes management.
It is.
I mean, that was not in the exchange program.
Not at all. No, it was not. In fact, I remember the day that I went in to visit my diabetes educator, and then she had an RD with her, and the visits were always together. And the dietitian at that meeting was teaching me to read labels for carbohydrates. So it was rolling out of that exchange system into, you can count your carbs and now you can start to take insulin for what you want to eat, as long as you're trying to meet these needs because you're still a growing child, right? This is how much you need to eat, but this is how to cover it better. She taught me, I will never forget, she taught me how to read a label, because she asked me, what would you really like to eat that you haven't been able to?
Word from our sponsor. Byram Healthcare understands that managing diabetes isn't one size fits all. With a full range of CGMs, insulin pumps, and diabetes supplies from top brands, Byram makes it easy to get what you need, hassle-free, shipped right to your door. And Byram's team of experts helps navigate insurance so you can focus on living your best life. Ready for better diabetes care? Visit byramhealthcare.com/podcast or call 866-692-8024 and select option 3. And now, back to our program.
And I said, I'd like a Hershey bar with almonds. I don't know why, but that was just something that, like...
Do you still hold that as like a favorite food?
It's kind of funny. I don't really. I really like chocolate.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to have almonds in it, nor be a gigantic.
Right.
But it was the reading of the label and understanding those nutrients that went into it. And again, a focus still on carbohydrates, but the understanding that if I wanted the whole bar, this ratio would allow me to eat it. And then my blood sugar would do what I wanted it to do. And it was really profound.
I think that the ratios, this beginning of your carb ratio, your insulin sensitivity, correction factor was empowering.
It is.
Because all of a sudden you can navigate going out to eat differently or, traveling differently. And it
Yeah.
really changed kind of how to expect your blood sugars to respond.
And that expectation goes along with what you were, talking about before my Hershey bar story was really the timing. When we
Hmm.
talk about diabetes, I always still in my mind think about the three points of diabetes management being insulin, food, and movement or
Hmm.
activity, right?
Right.
And I think of the three of those, while we think a lot about food, and not
Because
as
you
much
got
as
to
we
do it. You got to
because you
eat.
have to do it, we have to eat.
Right.
We don't think as much as we should about activity. But
No.
the one that I think really gets missed is, okay, I know I need to take insulin, so I take my insulin. But now with the technology we have, the understanding of, as you said, the timing of the insulin.
Hmm.
Like, when should I take my insulin to cover that Hershey bar so that I do get the response that I want? And then on the back end, I can still enjoy having had it, and I'm not fighting a 250 blood sugar.
Right, right. And I mean, I think there's a couple of things I think will be written on my tombstone one day. And one of them is nothing is spontaneous in diabetes management. And that just is strides for meal planning, right?
Yes,
And not just the food you're going to eat, but the timing of that
yes,
insulin. If you don't plan ahead, you can expect to have a spike. And it doesn't matter how fancy our algorithms are, our pumps are, our CGMs, or how much we spent for it. The insulin hasn't changed.
no.
It really hasn't.
In a long time, I can't even remember when. So my first change of insulin from R, which, I mean, I was pre-bolusing by
Yeah. Gosh.
45 minutes at least. I remember I was working in college at a plasma donation center,
Oh,
and which was really fascinating. It was
yeah.
a super
I
cool
bet.
job. But I remember my breaks were only 30 minutes for my meal and for my insulin, right? And I was using our insulin.
Right.
And I remember reading about Humalog. And I went to my doctor at my next visit and I said, "You're going to write me a prescription for this because I only have 30 minutes to take insulin and finish my meal and get back out on the floor. And my R insulin isn't working." He was like,
Right.
he kind of like, I was very upfront with him. He
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, we can do that." So, but it was a changing point and an understanding. And I
Absolutely.
didn't have a CGM at that point. I just had a billion test strips to be able to finger stick more often than I was ever told to.
Right.
But it was the information about starting, especially in college, understanding, gosh, the food that I eat, this is the choice that I have.
Right. And I always try to remember and remind people, the insulin we're using for that bowl of cereal that is going to spike your blood sugar pretty quickly is the same insulin that when your blood sugar is 300, we have to wait an hour and a half for you to start seeing a change. I mean, that is the same insulin. And so it makes sense that we would have to take our insulin ahead of time
Yeah.
because we call it fast acting insulin, but isn't that fast.
It isn't. I always think that rapid is such a misnomer,
Oh my
honestly.
gosh. I wish they called it slow as molasses insulin and then everyone would really appreciate it.
Right, right. I know. Well, and even that, we have rapid, and now we have a little bit more rapid, right? With the
Right.
Fiasps and the
Yep.
Lumjevs and that
The
kind
ultra
of stuff.
rapid.
The
Hmm.
ultra, but there is still a place, and I'm very grateful that they still do make our insulin, because there is a place for some people who've decided
Sure.
on a fueling plan for their life to be able
Yep.
to use that. But again, what's it boiled down to for them? They've figured out their bolus timing for that.
Or maybe just have a more regulated schedule and not,
True.
a college student kind of, juggling 3 jobs in school.
Right. Yes.
Because we've all been there.
We've all been there. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think, while talking about insulin, we've also not really mentioned, because it can't be used under the age of 18, right? Afrezza. So
On label, we should say.
right, on label, correct. And so I think it begs a bit in the discussion around nutrition.
Yeah.
Because there are times, as you just said, college days where you're really, really busy and you can barely get to the mess hall and grab something and then head out. Or if I've worked with a number of, executive level business people who on meals out, they don't
Right.
have the time between conversation that's business specific to actually get their timing down. So,
Yeah.
Afrezza I think it's underutilized.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking of really anyone who has just crazy busy schedules and they're like, hurry, hurry, hurry. Okay, eat. Right. I mean, diabetes just doesn't lend itself for that kind of schedule. And,
No.
but I do agree. I think Afrezza, when I've personally used it, I notice that action time is really fast and lovely for when I need it. I don't use it often, but when I do appreciate having it on hand as another tool.
Yeah, no, it's a great one in the whole realm of specifics, I think, to nutrition and the way that we now live our lives.
Right.
Work well.
Right.
I guess, another thing that I often think of that gets discussed maybe inaccurately within food is, and especially with the newer food on the market we have today, the low carb kind of trend to using much higher fiber content.
Right. And having
food.
net carbs. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I was just thinking when you were
telling,
when you were talking about your Hershey's bar with the almonds and learning the label, I was thinking, I wonder if she was even talked about the fiber that maybe the almonds were putting in, right? I mean, I don't think that was something that we really started talking about until maybe 10 years ago.
I would agree. And I don't even know, maybe a little bit ahead of that, because I do remember visiting with a diabetes educator before I was an educator. And she was talking about fiber, and the idea at that point wasn't as in depth as we usually get. It was more aligned with, if there's fiber, just take it out. Just don't count it.
Right. And it didn't matter if it was insoluble or soluble. And I know we've had this debate, amongst our integrated diabetes providers. And I do think that fiber hits people differently.
It does.
Some people will subtract all of it out and do just fine. As I've gotten older, that does not work so well for me. And it means that I have a longer metabolism or a longer digestion time, but it certainly doesn't mean I'm eliminating a good amount of insulin.
Right. No, that's kind of funny. I've found the same thing. In fact, some of the lower carb varieties of if and when I like making bread. I know you like to make bread too.
I make sourdough regularly. I actually have one that's going to go out of the oven soon.
Yay. I made your sourdough. I think I told you I made your sourdough discard scones. They are good.
They are good. They don't have a lot of fiber.
No, a lot of butter. I don't think I've added that much butter to anything in a really long
time. Yes. It is well worth the effort. They're good.
It is. But on the lower carb front, on a more day-to-day basis, I'm not low carb, but I really pay attention to the kinds of carbs that I bring into, my body. And if I ever do have lower carb breads, there's one variety that I really like, but I've found the same thing in that if I discount the fiber, it does not work.
No.
If I cover it all, thankful for the AID system that I use, because I can tell the system to deliver the insulin I need over a time period, which is very helpful.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. But I can't discount it.
No, I can't discount it as much, but it's the time of digestion that I absolutely pay attention to, not subtracting out insulin. Yeah, right. That's what I found as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think, just along with that, a lot of times I hear a lot of discussion about nutrition before activity and if people should eat and what they should eat and avoiding low blood sugars. And a lot of times I find that people are carb loading to increase their blood sugars to be a high level, but their automated system is just dumping insulin. And so then they end up with a low, and they think it's the food. They need to have more food, more carbohydrates, but that's not where the problem is coming from.
No. And it also brings in the idea of, are you fueling your body because your body needs it as an athlete?
Right.
And it was a really hard concept that I used to work a lot more with athletes, again, especially endurance. It was a really hard concept for those with type 1 to understand. You have to think about fueling yourself and athletics first.
Right.
And then you have to understand how to work that in for blood sugar management. And it's almost the opposite for most people with diabetes, as you're kind of speaking to. It's like, no, I have to make sure my blood sugar doesn't get too low. So I have to eat all of this extra food, but does that really serve your performance? Most likely not.
No. And then you're sluggish and you're not doing your fastest activity, whatever that may be. And I don't know about you, but I really prefer to eliminate that and work out on a fasted state. I've got less variables, less insulin for sure. That might be a whole other discussion that we have in terms of fueling for performance.
Yeah, no, but I think it's a valuable one to bring in terms of just the nutrition realm. Understand your needs. As I said in the background, kids usually get a visit with dietitians within diagnosis just to make sure, where are they on their growth chart? Are they meeting it? This is what you need to make sure that they're eating every day. But we lose that as we diagnose, or as you get diagnosed older and older, you kind of lose that piece. And so we have to have an understanding of our base need. And then if you are an athlete, what to add on top of this just from that exercise piece. And as we grow, our needs change.
Right. Absolutely.
So you can't keep eating.
Change.
And
gosh, I wonder if there's been a study, and I don't know this for sure, on date or age of diagnosis, and then how you approach your diabetes management from a nutrition standpoint. And I don't know, maybe you and I should do that.
That would be a really interesting thing to study, because I'm sure, we all have run across enough people who started kind of where we did with this age-old exchange diet.
Absolutely.
And how you've moved forward in remembering.
And you really had to have carbohydrates, right? Because you had a huge dose of basal insulin that you were kind of fighting against the rest of the day, and you couldn't take it out of you. And so once it was delivered, that was just kind of it. And now that's not the case. We've got, if you're on an automated system that can suspend, you don't have to, kind of force yourself to eat certain things.
And that's actually a really valid point to make, in that our older insulins, like I used L, or what was called Lente insulin, R insulin, right?
Absolutely.
And so I took it, I mixed it up in a syringe.
Shake.
Cloudy first.
Yes. Or actually, it wasn't shake, roll.
Roll it, exactly. But, it was twice a day. It was take it in the morning, and then the L insulin peaked around lunch. So my lunch had to be very tiny, and it had to be the same content in those different, food groups. And then dinner time, again, I took the same, different dose, but the same mix of insulins. And that covered me. I always had to have a bedtime snack because the peak in that was going to hit over. I mean, there was a very strategic. And so in talking to other people who've had that pattern, I think to this day, I can't sleep later than like 6 o'clock in the morning, because that was when I took my dose of insulin. And I always got up, even in my teen years where I was going to sleep later, I still got up to take my insulin, and then I'd go back to bed.
Right. I mean, thank goodness for new insulins and new technology, new formulation. Yeah. But I do think a lot of people have the very strong belief that they must have a nighttime snack to avoid low blood sugars, even if they're on automated systems, and even if they really don't need it at all. That is so ingrained.
It is. And it's a hard train of thought to break when you grew up with that as the idea.
And there's a lot of fear involved with not having that.
Yeah. And it also kind of goes back to, which I definitely, another conversation about fasted, like exercise or fasting, especially from, all over health, but especially female health, there's some good value to it. But with our systems today, we should be able to fast. I even say that with our newer long-acting insulins today, even if you're using multiple daily injections,
agreed. Yeah,
there should be enough flexibility in the way that has stability in action to fast if you wanted to, or skip a meal if you wanted to. And again, it's a really hard brain flip to kind of make.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. They're just flatter in delivery, and hopefully not. The new ones, you're right, they don't have the peaks that we kind of grew up with, and And so hopefully people test that and recognize that they could fast all day, because that's really the beginning and the end of the other insulin deliveries that they're getting.
And the AID systems of any variety, it really does boil down to having those settings tested, especially your baseline basal. If you are the variable schedule type of person who sometimes, gosh, you work through your lunch break. Well, if your system is set up well, you should be able to do that, right? That's okay.
Yeah. I always ask people up front, do you feel like you could go the whole day without eating? Not that, of course, as a registered dietitian, we want that or would promote it, but could you? And I mean, most times they're like, well, no, I couldn't.
Right. Yeah. And then you say, well, yes, you should be able to. And then we're
let's get to work.
Let's examine what we need to do to get you there.
Yeah, exactly.
Gosh, we could probably go on for another 2 hours. I know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think just from what we've kind of talked about today, just that, this is such a bad pun, but there's no food off the table for people living with diabetes. We just need to strategize for it and learn how we're going to approach that. And so I don't think either one of us would approach talking to people and say, you have to follow low carb or you have to have this. We would just really work and design that individual's nutrition plan for fueling their body to the best of their health.
And I think the value in doing that with a dietitian too is that we have worked with many other health conditions, right? And the fact that if you also have, heart disease or you have something else in the picture.
Yeah. Celiac disease or, I mean, there's just so much that we also would take into consideration for the whole person, not just the diabetes.
Yeah. I think that would be another one. I mean, even just around the gluten-free realm, another whole topic of discussion because it just has so many different little rabbit holes to talk about. So
absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot to talk about then in future.
I know. I'm excited.
Lots and lots of things, which we'll hopefully be able to bring in more around kind of the CGMs and the technology and how to use them around food and what else to explore. So,
and I'd love to hear people's comments of what they would like us to discuss also. I think that would be fun to hear from people watching.
It would be. Yeah, that would be great. Well, thanks, Dana. It was good to chat with you today.
Thanks for tuning in to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast is brought to you by Integrated Diabetes Services, where experience meets expertise, passion meets compassion, and diabetes care is personal because we live it too. Our team of clinicians, all living with type 1 diabetes, understands the challenges firsthand. We're here to help no matter where you are in the world. From glucose management to self-care strategies, the latest tech, sports and exercise, weight loss, type 1 pregnancy, and emotional well-being, we've got you covered. We offer consultations in English and Spanish via phone, video chat, email, and text. Want to learn more? Visit integrateddiabetes.com or email info@integrateddiabetes.com to schedule a consultation. On behalf of Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, I'm Gary Shiner, wishing you a fantastic week ahead. And don't forget to think like a pancreas.